It's Griffin Conine season, guys. Griffin Conine is getting the call, his first call by the Marlins. Xavier Edwards, unfortunately, headed to the 10-day IL. That's the corresponding move. But Griffin Conine is and has flown with the team to Colorado. 4 games in Coors for Griffin Conine to get his major league career going. Perfect landing spot. How many bombs is there in Coors for Griffin Conine? Tons to get into. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. Happy Monday, guys. It is a bank holiday Monday here in the UK, so no work and all play. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Reminder, there's also a YouTube channel. Hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your projections. Over, under 0.5 home runs for Griffin Conine in this series. Let me know you're hitting the over. Are you hitting the under? Is he going to get any playing time? He should get playing time. But delighted to welcome onto, in a regular spot as well, in his regular spot. He's back, the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. How we doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Pete. We're getting to an exciting part of the year now, aren't we? As September sort of comes around, we're going to sort of see where the Marlins project themselves as far as bringing up who they're interested in for next year. So, exciting times.
Agreed. Rosters will expand on the weekend as well. So we've got Griffin Conine up. Again, the collateral damage is, unfortunately, Xavier Edwards, who has been the Marlins' best player by some distance, offensive guy in particular, probably generally their best player. Specifically in recent months anyway, but headed to the IL with a back issue. He said he was going to be okay, said he was going to be day-to-day. It sounds like jazz, and next thing is he's on the 10-day IL. Nevertheless, before we get into all of the news, and there's been tons of action over the weekend, this episode is sponsored by SupplyHouse, and SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. So, Sean, we get the news broken by, of course, our man Craig Mish. Griffin Conine to be, promoted. Recalled is the wrong phrase to be. What is the right phrase, actually, Sean? He's not on the roster at this point, so he's getting the call up anyway, and he's going to be headed with the team into Colorado here, 4-game series. For those that are maybe new to the Marlins, there could be some of them listening in. I don't know. But the name Conine obviously resonates long into the history of the Marlins. Of course, Griffin Conine, the son of Mr. Marlin, Jeff Conine. Sean, you followed the Marlins a lot longer than I have, particularly when Jeff Conine was a Marlins player specifically. Just try and describe to me how big a part of the Marlins history Jeff Conine has been thus far.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I think he might have been the only player, or at least he was one of the players who was on both the World Series teams. So that kind of is where it is. He had 2 stints with the Marlins. He is Mr. Marlin to a lot of people. Some people would prefer to give that moniker to Luis Castillo, who played for longer and probably a little bit better than Conine. But no, Conine is, especially because obviously he still works with the Marlins now. And now with Griffin coming up, that name, Conine name now is so entrenched in Marlins history, more so than pretty much any other name. So yeah, it's an exciting little story. We talked a little bit just before we came on, and would this be such a big story if his name was Smith? Probably not. But obviously, when you've got that family connection, it's a cool little story, isn't it?
It is. I would have been happy with that, by the way, because there would have been no typical pronunciation issues that me and you always face into on this show. So if it was Smith coming up, a power stick, AAA would have been all over that. And so, but you're right, there's extra allure associated to this name. The other thing to call out as well for Griffin specifically, and again, we spoke about this before we hit record here. I, for some reason in my head, had it that the Griffin was drafted by the Marlins. It transpires he wasn't drafted by the Marlins. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course he wasn't. He was traded as part of the Jonathan VR trade back in 2021. So yeah, Griff has been a part of the organization for some time, was left unprotected. I want to say at least one, but maybe twice in the Rule 5 selection. So I think he's maybe had 2 years where he's been available, at least one. Nevertheless, it's his first time making it onto the 40-man and the first time making it up to the active roster as well. Sean, if you can, try and summarize what kind of campaign Griffin Conine has been having this year, how it compares to maybe the past couple of seasons. Like, what should we expect from Griffin Conine?
He is ultimately a free outcome player. He's going to strike out, he's going to hit home runs, or he's going to walk. His walks aren't that high, but they're higher than they probably are deserving because of that power. His power stroke hasn't been fantastic this year at AAA, 19 home runs in 437 plate appearances. So it's not like he's, an absolute bombastic power hitter at this point. He's having an okay season. A 113 WRC plus at AAA at 26 isn't actually something to get too excited about. I'm intrigued to see A, how he does, B, how long he gets at the major league level. If he gets the rest of the year, or if this is just a roster spot while X is down. Depending on how long X is down, we don't know, do we?
No.
So yeah, how long does he get? How well does he do? And where does he fit in the Marlins' plans? Because at this point, is he something that the Marlins look at as part of the future? Or is this just one of those fun little stories where an aging player who's cut his teeth in the minors for all these years finally gets a couple of at-bats at the major league level just to say he was a major league? I don't think he's quite that point, but I don't think he's a full-time Major League Baseball player going forwards either. He's somewhere in the middle between that. And ultimately, that's, if he comes up and he rakes and then has a good spring, who knows? He's on the 40-man now, so he's going to start earning more money. So he's going to have to perform. I know the minimum is the minimum, but for the Marlins to be successful, they need minimum guys outperforming that number. So, it's a fun story. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. That power at Coors. We could have a fun little beginning of the week, to be frank, but it's got swing and miss stuff as well. So let's not set the ceiling too high for the kid.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny when you go and look back at like 24 and what he's been doing in 2024. It looks pretty similar to what he did in 23 as well, to be honest with you. Like, there's a lot of comparative numbers right across the board, really. So yeah, he's kind of been at this level maybe for a couple of seasons. It's been a pretty crowded outfield situation with the Marlins, I guess, with obviously Jesus Sanchez, Brian De La Cruz, Avisel Garcia blocking everyone under the sun. I do wonder if maybe he has been blocked, and actually, if maybe, let's say, Avisel Garcia wasn't with the Marlins, whether maybe things would have been slightly different for Griffin Conine at this point. But the reality is he's going to be added to the 40-man. He will be on the active roster. He then has 3 minor league option years, obviously, that are there. But when we look at this series specifically, this 4-game series in Coors, which, I mean, what a great series. If you're not making your debut at home, I think the next best option is to be on the road in Coors as a left-handed power hitting offensive guy. So I think this is a really intriguing spot for him. How much do you think he plays, Sean? 4 games. I haven't looked yet at the Rockies' projected starters, but the Marlins have gone heavy platoon galore in the outfield all year long. How much kind of playing time should we envisage here, considering this Jesus Sanchez and Kyle Stowers that they both want to give a ton of playing time to, both left-handed sticks? Are we going to see an outfield of the 3 of those guys at one point? Maybe Jesus Sanchez has to slide into center field, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be some mix and moving. At this point, the results don't matter. In fact, you'd argue that the Marlins now have the Rockies as their biggest competitor in who wants to lose the most. So, yeah, I think we've seen some pretty, dire outfield lineups recently. I'm not saying that Conine is going to join that party, but ultimately the Marlins are scrambling here and there. I mean, obviously they want to give Stowers some opportunity. He's up for a reason. And I guess they want to give Conine an opportunity as well. So, Jesus could easily be benched even against lefties. I mean, obviously he had a little bit of a faux pas that we'll probably get into later.
We'll have to talk about he's on the rundown, so
so there's no reason why the Marlins should be rushing to give Sanchez every single at bat that they can give him just because it's against lefties. This is the part of the season where you're trying to learn what you can about these players. We pretty much know what Jesus Sanchez is at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. Considering what you've seen thus far of Kyle Stowers, considering the start was worst case, like it was literally a worst case start, and it's obviously improved to a degree since then. How much pressure's on Kyle Stowers at this point? I know we're talking about Griffin Conine, what kind of role could he carve out, but in reality, Kyle Stowers isn't a million miles away from the same situation as Griffin Conine, to be honest, in terms of age. In terms of kind of minor league track records, like it's not dissimilar, to be honest with you. And so I'm interested about Kyle Stowers and just how much pressure he'll be feeling, not just for now, but like whether he can actually carve out, a role here for the Marlins in 25 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even say 24. I mean, if Conine has a hot couple of games, a hot week, when X comes back, there's a question mark of would it be Stowers that goes down rather than Conine? Because you're right, his actual track record, his age, at this point, he probably should be looked at the same way as Conine. Obviously, he had a higher pedigree and just hasn't been able to make it go so far. I mean, I tweeted out earlier last week, I think it was, the fact that now he's got over 100 plate appearances. I can compare him to some back in the old day when the NL had pitchers hitting. I think there were 5 pitchers with over 100 plate appearances in the Marlin jersey that have a higher OPS than he does. That remains the same. I've just had a quick look at his OPS. So, yeah, I mean, he's not just playing for his major league future as much as that's actually going to be the case. He's playing for it right now. And I don't want to put too much pressure on him and say, this is your make it or break it season, because he's going to be 27 going into next year. He hasn't shown anything at the major league level. Marlins are starting to try and push for the future. So I think the way I look at him is he's a bit of a throw-in in a trade that we're going to take a peek at, and he's easily binned off if there's nothing to see there.
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Like it's clear that Koninobi was the main target, and Stowers was almost just an afterthought, right? Almost like a player to be named later that just got named at that moment in time, to be honest with you. Pedigree is a touch higher in many ways, but for the age, for the profile, the minor league numbers, I mean, I don't know a ton about the guys. I don't track them closely, but you take a very, very brief glance and you look and you think, for all the hype that Stowers is getting, him and Conine are not dissimilar. And there's clearly a lot of potential challenges for Griffin Conine, but equally there's a lot of fun stories to be written here. And this is, I think, the funny thing. And this is why, I knew Conine was going to get a shot this year. I knew it 100% because the season was obviously cooked. There was always going to be a situation where an injury presented an opportunity. And the question will be for Griff is, what can he do with that? And, 4-game series in Coors, 3-game series in San Fran, then back home. I don't think Xavier Edwards can come off the IL until mid next week. And so he's going to have at least one home series if all's well and no injuries, etc., with the Marlins. And so it's not the worst set of opponents to be going against. Just looking as well at the Rockies project the probable starters. Looks like they got 3 righties going of the 4 games. And so, in those games, we're going to see Jesus Sanchez. We're going to see Stowers. The question is do they go all lefty sticks and throw Conine out there as well? Maybe 1-2 of those games and see what's cooking. So, I wish Conine well. I do. I think these are the types of stories that we as the fans need at this point. Like, there's a lot more attachment to Griffin Conine than there is in a Christian Pache, in Hensley. I don't even know his first name. That's how bad it is. But there's no attachment there with these guys. But with Conine, there's clearly historical attachment. He's been part of the organization for many years, and we all as fans want him to succeed. And so, we'll see what he's got. But great opportunity for him. Sean, let's kind of wind the clock on a touch here. Fast forward to the off season. Does Griffin Conine remain on the 40-man headed into next year? Do they find a spot for Griffin Conine on the 40-man in advance of the 25 season? Or could this be a promoted and then maybe waived DFA'd as they maybe clear another roster spot, as they've been doing with the relievers all of the last 4 months?
I think that might be the case. I think this is just his, all the stories we hear is about how, no one's tried hard and no one's wanted this more. This all sounds to me like a good luck story rather than this is the start of his major league career. I think this is just, I think you're right. He will get a home series because, just that story, him and his dad on the field together, throwing catch. I think that's just one of those September stories that you always get in baseball. Look, if he rakes, over 4 weeks, are the Marlins going to change their view on him? Like, we've got years and years and years and years of minor league data that say this guy's going to hit for a bit of power, but it's going to strike out too much to be a major leaguer. That ultimately is basically what the Marlins see him as now. So let's get the good story and let's enjoy it.
Yeah, well, speaking of good stories, let's hit the first ad and then let's come back to what seems to be a really appealing story in Connor Norby in terms of how he has started his Marlins career. So we're going to dig into him. He has moved into the leadoff spot with Xavier Edwards being hurt, and he has taken full advantage of that, no doubt about it. So before we do that, let's let you know, firstly, about our good friends over at Supply House. And guys, you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. That's SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. The easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support with industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every single time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins with me, Peter Pratt, and UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. It's Conine season, but equally, it is Norby season. Connor Norby, given the opportunity, the Marlins created that opportunity by moving on from Emmanuel Rivera. But Connor Norby up, playing everyday third base, nowhere else, third base only, and was hitting 5-6. Xavier Edwards down. Next thing is Norby lead off, and he has taken that opportunity fully. Sean, your immediate reaction or initial reactions to Connor Norby and the impact he's had thus far, and has it changed anything for you, I guess? Small sample size, maybe.
Yeah, how long have we got to talk about such a small sample size? I think the most interesting thing to me is the fact that he's hitting leadoff, because I mean the guy has a 1.8% walk rate, real small sample size, but I think he has a walk in his time so far. Anytime you can get a guy with a 281 OBP into the leadoff spot, you absolutely do it. It's weird. I think if you could argue it's because they want to give him as much opportunity as he can to get at bats. When you bat lead off, you've got the highest chance of getting the most in the team. But he's, his power profile, he's not a leadoff guy, is he? But yeah, there's only so much you can glean from 15 games so far at the major league level. my main concern is his strikeouts. Strikeouts are still super high. The walk rate's really low. To get to a 268 average as he is right now, he's got an over 300 BABIP. His home run to fly ratio is super high as well. So my main want as far as seeing his plays, I don't care about the home runs. I don't care about the extra base hits. I want to see that strikeout, that walk rate improve. These are all things that I pretty much said about Jazz early in his career. And that's what Norby looks like to me at the moment. 24-year-old Norby looks like Jazz early in his Marlins career. A lot of promise, but some ugly things in his numbers that he needs to work on.
Yeah, the leading indicators. It's a very interesting comp you make there, Sean, for many reasons. But what I would say is, and this really stood out to me, was his first home run as a Marlin. Not his first home run in Lone Depot, because he did blast one for the Orioles when they were playing the Marlins. But his first home run as a Marlin, spanks one to center field, destroys it, but there was no pimp jobs. There was nothing. Round the base quickly, couple of high fives, sprinkled with a couple of nuts, at the back end of the, with the rotation guys, and they're throwing some seeds around, whatever they're doing. And he goes straight back down and sits there with his iPad. And it just looks like he's all business, Conor Norby. That really, really stood out to me, where, we know how Jazz would have responded and how he did respond for his first home run. Like, Jazz is pimping the life out of it. He's Euro stepping around every base. He's probably doing a somersault in the forward roll. He's going and retrieving the base. You know what I mean? Like, very different mentalities, clearly. But Conor Norby, it really stood out to me just how business he is. He's obviously been doing a ton of media after the games because he's been a big part of the games. And again, with those, the main takeaways are, this is all business. The guy is like really grounded, really down to earth, and kind of calling out. The bit I like too is like, listen, when we get the rotation back in 25, who knows what can happen? So wait to see. But did you notice that? Did that stand out to you as well about Norby and the slightly different approach, let's say, to Jazz and from a home run hit perspective?
Yeah, I mean, they're two very different people, aren't they? And however, whatever works for you works, doesn't it? Like, Jazz couldn't play like Norby, and I'd like to see Norby play like Jazz. See a couple of Euro steps and a couple of step back jumpers. I mean, I'd probably look more out of place doing it than he does, but I think it'd be a close run thing.
Yeah, it would. It would. But, fair play to Norby. He's definitely, he started well. But to your point, you can get a little bit carried away by just falling in love with a couple of home runs and a double down the line or whatever it might be. But when you look at the leading indicators, which are the guy doesn't walk at all and strikes out too much, in the grand scheme, that's, the home runs are going to dry up because of that. And next thing is, you're looking going, hold on a minute, we've got a problem here. We've got a guy hitting 220 and, not getting any walks. And next thing is, you're in trouble. But defensively, though, Sean, what have you made of his third base defense, actually? Because that was one of the other kind of major question marks here headed in. He's been pretty much out there every day since he's been in the lineup. To my eye, and I haven't watched every game, but to my eye, it's looked pretty decent, actually.
Yeah, I think it's one of those sort of like fake it till you make it Arias at second base situations, isn't it? He doesn't quite have like the prototypical third base arm.
No, he doesn't.
That you'd like to see. That is reminiscent of when Segura had a couple of games out there. He'd have to take sort of like 6 crow hops towards first base to try and get the ball there, and ultimately the player would end up being safe.
I forgot about Gene playing third, by the way. Like, I mean, that was only last year. But I've completely erased that from my memory, which probably isn't the worst thing. But I mean, it's a great comp in many ways, isn't it? Like, they're middle infielders. They're being asked to play third. They haven't got a prototypical third base arm. I think nobody wants to play second base. Generally, I think he sees himself as an everyday second baseman next year, and I think probably about 9 of the current roster see themselves the same. To be honest, just on that, just to segue in. Talk to me about Otto Lopez. Where's your head with Otto Lopez around like his future here with the Marlins, because, I mean, his start to his career was very similar to Norby's start, where he kind of dropped in, started hitting home runs. Everyone's like, oh my days, this waiver claim is unreal. Naturally, it's kind of like rebalanced. But the defense has been unquestioned with Otto Lopez. It's been really impressive. But, you know, do you really need a defensive first second baseman, really, and you know, for the Marlins anyway? I'm not convinced they do. So how do you see him and fitting into this kind of next year as well?
His defense is amazing. To
Yeah.
be frank, like, and that's carrying such a value to him. Like, if I were to tell you, and it's true, he's got a 1.2 F-WAR, I think you'd be surprised. You factor that in with a 65 WRC plus, you can tell that the stick's a bit anemic. There's speed there. There's 25, 30 stolen bases in a full season. So he is a Major League Baseball player at his lowest level. I think he will be on the 26-man roster of next year. I think it's funny. I'm so used to saying the Bertie role because the Marlins typically have all these infield players who just quite aren't good enough to be an actual full-time player. But with the speed and the defense, and a guy that can play middle infield defense, that's a lock for the Marlins through a retool, a rebuild, building up, however you want to call it. A team
next wave, baby, next wave.
Yeah, next wave. Sorry, yeah, hashtag next wave.
Good spot on that, by the way. I did see that too on the new hashtag that kind of got rolled out like sneakily, and it's like, oh, next wave, okay. Not just getting started, it's next wave now. I get it. So yeah, why haven't, considering Xavier Edwards is currently on the IL, why haven't we seen any Otto Lopez at shortstop? Do you think?
To be honest, I mean, it's something that he probably could do. It's probably something that they should look at doing. I'd like to see, you know, Norby getting time at second base, put Berger back at third base while X is down. I mean, this is an opportunity for them to play him there. But obviously, the Marlins know what they plan to do next year, so they're working their way through what they want to do. But I think, in a real world, you want X at second base, at shortstop. Sorry, you want Norby at second, and you want Berger at third. That's how I would play them. Admittedly, that's a pretty weak defensive infield, but they're your best bats. Let's get them in the lineup. With the pitching depth that the Marlins have, I feel they can get away with a bit of a shaky, fake it till you make it defense behind them. It's not as if they put, you know, Norby at third and leaving Berger at first. They're much stronger anyway defensively.
No.
So that's how
same difference. Listen, we had all these concerns last year about the defense, and the team was brilliant in 23. You know, Segura was at third, and Wendell was at short, and Arias was at second, and, you know, Cooper Loop was holding it down at first for a while. You know, there was all these concerns. Jazz was in center. I mean, there was so much like worry, like concern about the Marlins defense, but overall it didn't actually matter. Like, the defense was fine. So I'm like you. I like Berger at third. I still like him at third because the stick, the arm, everything kind of fits the profile. Norby's a second baseman. And if he's going to be, this is where I'm going with the Otto Lopez situation, is like, Norby needs to be playing second base. Xavier Edwards, I think, needs to be playing shortstop, and Berger needs to be playing third. Like, that's the Marlins' best, you know, left side of the diamond, you know, center, however you want to phrase it. First base, maybe it's De Los Santos. I don't know. We'll see what happens. They've got a few options there, but that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a little bit of that in September, actually, and just kind of get a sense of what it looks like. Otto Lopez, maybe he's on the roster, maybe he isn't. I don't know. I mean, he's unbelievable at second base defensively. Like, you can't get away from that. But the stick isn't good enough. And for a team that, you know, is never going to be, you know, top 10 offense, like, it's hard to carry any, like, true passengers, I would say. So we'll wait to see. I'm interested to see how it goes. I want to talk about Jesus Sanchez right after the break, because there's a few things in my mind about Jesus Sanchez. So I want to talk about that, particularly his rule faux pas on Sunday. What game was that? Sunday, where Yeah, he was intentionally walked, but didn't quite make it to the base, and that spelled disaster. So when we talk about Jesus Sanchez, that sums up Jesus Sanchez in a nutshell there. Before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. Guys, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins and me, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. Sean talked me through Jesus Sanchez. I want to start with, a very typical Jesus Sanchez play, a play I've never, ever seen before. Didn't know what the hell was going on. I don't think Jesus Sanchez knew what was going on, hence the problem. But what did you make of this fiasco with him being intentionally walked, pinch run, didn't quite make it to the base, and thus was called out?
Yeah, so as you described it, he's approaching first base, realizes he's getting pinch run for, and just about turns and walks off the field. It's funny, like it's one of those things. Like, I play at quite literally the lowest level of baseball you could humanly find, and
still a stud.
Yeah, and yet that still looks to me like something that would never happen on the field. Like, touching the bases is rather an important point. Like, we spend a lot of times with new people talking about the idea of having to tag back on a fly ball and making sure that everyone knows how many outs there are when you're on the bases, because when the ball's in play, or everything can go quite crazy quite quickly if people don't know what they're doing. This isn't even that live of a play, is it? It's
No.
an intentional walk. I want to say that some blame should be on John Jay as well at first base coaching. Like, that's like rule 101. Make sure your man's on the base.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a case of any day you watch baseball, you might see something you've never seen before. Despite the amount of games that are played over the amount of years that baseball's been a thing. So, in a way, it's something that we can chuckle at, and doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. If the Marlins were in a playoff run and that happened, then yeah, I might be killing him a bit more. But it gives us something funny to look back on in the off season, as far as funny moments.
Definitely does. I don't think anyone knew what the hell was going on. And to be fair, Skip Schumacher after the game, I think, held his hands up and said that's on me. Like, if Jesus doesn't know what the rules are, then that's on me. But I mean, he's had an interesting year this year, Jesus Sanchez, because he was benched as well for something else earlier in the year, which I think was a bit unfair, if I remember correctly. Like, some sort of play in the outfield that maybe didn't put full effort into. I can't quite recall, but yeah, nevertheless, as always with Jesus Sanchez, it's a bit of an adventure, let's say. We'll carry on talking about him in a sec, because I want to get your sense about where the Marlins go with him generally. But just a kind of slight kind of addition to the Griffin Conine piece, just as we're on, I guess. Firstly, he's not wearing number 19. He's been given jersey number 56, which I think he wore in spring training, if I remember correctly. But also, he's not in the lineup today. And so game one in Coors, no Griffin Conine. So maybe we'll see a pinch hit at bat later in the game, but wait to see. I haven't seen the actual lineup, but I did see that flash up on Twitter while we're talking. Jesus Sanchez, though, considering he's in arbitration and considering the Marlins, they're following the Rays model, I'm very interested to see what the future holds for Jesus Sanchez. We've kind of gotten used to him, from a very raw talent to a guy that we can see as a strong side platoon guy. But now in arbitration years, and the money starts to ramp up, et cetera, continual kind of faux pas mentally. He slept in one season, missed the start of a game. Like, he's just mentally, he's just a little bit, immature, I think. What do you see the future here for Jesus Sanchez with the Marlins? Like, Can you see them looking to move on from him at some stage this offseason, even maybe into the 25 campaign?
I think it's interesting, is that obviously he's 2.1 million this year. That's going to grow. It has to grow. The arbitration number always gets bigger. He's had, an averages and slightly below average year. So it's going to go up a little bit. If it's 3 million or 2.75, that's some money. That's not an insignificant amount of money, especially when you're talking about the Marlins. At this point, I think there's still some growth there. I think there's still some growth. Can he be a slightly above average baseball player? Some good pop. I mean, he's going to end the season with 2010 season probably, but for a guy that's going to get 500 at bats, who's a corner outfielder, I mean, I'd be quite scared to look at the numbers of guys who are in the corner outfield spots with 500 at bats. 2010 is probably going to look pretty anemic. I don't think he's playing for his job next year, or I don't think he's playing for his job as in he's not going to be here next year. I think he will be. I think the Marlins will try and hope that he takes a step on. If not, is he a trade piece at the deadline that can get you back not much, but something? I think that's what the Marlins would do. Is they wouldn't get him. He wouldn't go in the off season. If they weren't interested in keeping him, he probably would have gone at the deadline. I mean, they moved everything else, so why not him?
Yeah.
I think there's still some growth there. I think when he's on, he's on, and obviously some of the home runs he's hit this year have been massive. So in a year where the Marlins are going to be ramping up next year, a guy that can hit these sort of light tower home runs, that's a guy you want to keep on the roster just to have something to enjoy on the field.
He remains a bit of an enigma in some ways, and there was some sort of stat that got dropped onto the broadcast the other day around his home run yesterday in the first inning was, I don't know, 420 or something like that, or 430, whatever it might be, and then what followed that was half of his home runs this year have been at least that distance. That's his power when he catches hold of them is unquestioned. But to your point, there's a full body of work here, and 20 home runs from the corner outfield spot. It's actually underwhelming compared to production on teams that are in the mix. And so I just wonder with Jesus Sanchez if there's if he was moved, and by the way, he's a Super 2 guy, so he's got 3 more years of arbitration as well. So as we go into next year, I do think that's the year where they'll start thinking about what the future may hold for Jesus Sanchez. I think Craig Mish has kind of talked about it as well, saying that the Marlins do believe there's maybe a tick more of production that could come from him, I think, in the future, which I think we all believe. I think that's it with Jesus. We see the distance these balls travel, and what we're thinking is, instead of there being 20, can there be 35 of them? Or something in that range, as a strong side platoon guy. And I think that becomes very alluring. But I do think the Marlins will have a decision to make at some stage. They definitely will at some stage. And it wouldn't shock me if Jesus Sanchez is traded at the next deadline. Like you said, Sean, I think that is the first time you may get them seriously investigate that, depending on what's going on in the season. I mean, let's assume the Marlins are sellers. Who knows? They may be buyers. I mean, will they ever be buyers again? I don't even know. But yeah, Jesus Sanchez for me, I mean, that play just summed in, it's added to the back catalog of plays of Jesus Sanchez with him kind of walking off smiling, thinking, not knowing what the hell's going on. But nevertheless, there will be a 2010 campaign. Not sure what the future holds for him, but we will see. We will see. Connor Norby, I think, has been impressive in the leadoff spot in terms of highlight reels. Strikeouts too high, walks too low. Griffin Conine's up. He's not playing today. Xavier Edwards to the IL. Sean, it continues to be an interesting watch here for the Marlins. The offense has been better, I would say, in recent weeks. I think that's the one thing I'd say. There's more stories, there's more production, there's more happening than earlier in the year. But obviously, they've just got no pitching at this point. The bullpen is completely decimated. They've just got barely any talent there now, big league talent. The rotation has basically got, Max Meyer and Eddie Cabrera and like some journeymen in there and Beozo, whatever it might be. You have to be fearful of this pitching staff in Coors for 4 games. I'm not going to lie. Considering what the Cubs just did to the Marlins, I'm pretty nervous, I would say, about what could happen in Coors. Beozo in particular, the fly ball specialist. I mean, this could get a little bit scary, mate. But yeah, what's been, as you look ahead to this week in Coors, what are you looking for here from the Marlins?
Yeah, firstly, Belozo looks like he's pitching in Coors every day, so it will be interesting to see. I saw an interesting stat earlier today. It was the OPS of teams in August, and the Marlins were 17th, right in the middle. And
that doesn't shock me.
I think we've talked for years about the idea that the Marlins, they've got the pitching. They know they've got the pitching. They just need to be middle of the road offensively.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Marlins have got, Berger, Bride, and X, who are pretty much driving that at the moment. With Norby up and a few other guys, I think there are exciting things in this lineup offensively that you can look at and say this is not terrible, which is a low barrier, I know, but it's a barrier that the Marlins have struggled to get over recently. So at the moment, since sort of like early July through to now, Marlins offensively or a few guys in particular, have been really high-level players. I mean, Berger's 5th in WRC plus since the 13th of July, I think it was. Like 5th in baseball. Like he's one of the hottest hitters right now. Judge has just the last couple of days gone an absolute power stroke. So he's just gone over in home runs over Berger. But Berger is literally fighting Judge since that day. Tooth and nail in home runs, which, the Marlins, we know they've got the pitching. We just need to see a bit more with the bat. And so far, that's materialized. I'm looking forward to seeing what Berger, Bride, and Conine now can do at Coors. I think they can put on a bit of a show. And at this point in the year, that's all we're interested in, isn't it? When I'm watching, I don't care about winning. I just want to see a show.
That's what's changed recently is the Marlins are still losing games, but it's been a fun loss where there's offensive production, there's things happening. There's different storylines emerging rather than the Marlins are getting beat 8-0 day after day or 4-0 or whatever it might be. Nothing happening. The offense dead. No base runners. No nothing. Like this is different. It's been different. It's been a different type of watch, and some will take pleasure in that. We're kind of following along with a few of these stories, but it is what it is. But to your point, with Coors on deck here, it's going to be very interesting to see. And again, really, the Marlins could probably, ideally, would like to be swept here. They probably like to see a degree of offensive production from certain guys, but they probably like to be swept because it's pretty close between them and the Rockies right at the bottom here. And I know there's a lottery, but it helps to stay, the number 1 seed, let's say, in that lottery. Sean, we've gone 43 minutes, which wasn't a shocker. We did kind of jokingly say probably 40 minutes. So there we go. Appreciate you hopping on, mate, and joining me on Lock the Marlins on a Monday, of course. Looks like Conine not in the lineup, but hopefully we get to see him at some point in this series. We hope to see X back soon. We hope to see Connor Norby carrying on his scorching pace, but a few more walks and a few less Ks. Coors could be a very fun series, and let's see what Jesus Sanchez can do in Coors. Last time he was there, he stuck one in the 5th deck from memory, and so we'll look for more of that. Guys, be back tomorrow. See you then.